Please talk to us a little bit about the policies you're unveiling back on Friday, steps to inform about voting, to crack down on voter suppression, fight hate speech. You're taking action that, in fact, you say reflects months of work done with civil rights community. Are you worried by the civil rights community reaction to the steps taken, that they so far don't seem to feel like it's gone far enough?
I think it's quite right that civil rights organisations should pressure us to always do better. I think that's totally fair. We have 3 billion people or thereabouts on our platform around the world. Thankfully, hate speech is only a tiny minority of the total amount of content on our platforms. Around 115 billion messages are sent on our platforms on every, on an average day, and only a tiny fraction of that is hate speech. But because it's a tiny fraction, it might be harder to identify and remove. But we should, of course, always strive to do as well as we possibly can be. We've got a lot better over the years. So at the moment, we identify and then remove about 90% of the hate speech on our platforms before anyone reports it to us. And that is a transformation compared to where it was even 2 or 3 years ago, when it was as low as 23%. And independent assessments, the European Union issued a report last week, for instance, have confirmed that the velocity and scale at which we assess and deal with hate speech when it's reported to us within a 24-hour period is significantly stronger, our performance, than Twitter and YouTube and others. But of course, it is quite right that people should always demand that we should do more where we can, which is why we made further announcements last Friday to tighten up, for instance, our policies on what are called inflammatory ads. And we will continue, of course, to look at further measures that we can take.
Do you think you're held to a slightly different standard? You mentioned that, of course, the EU feels that you're taking things down at a faster velocity than Twitter, than YouTube, but are you held to a different standard? Are you singled out unfairly?
Oh, no, I don't. I think with success comes responsibility, and with success comes accountability. And I think it's right that Facebook, given that though it's a private company, in many ways, we provide the platform on which so much societal and public debate and political debate now plays out. And of course, that is especially true in the highly polarized and fraught environment in which a lot of these debates are now playing out in the United States in an election year. And of course, we're acutely aware that this is a time of great sensitivity. Emotions are running very high, rightly, in the United States after the killing of George Floyd. And of course, we are constantly scouring our platforms to make sure that there is legitimate public debate. Yes, that people say things that maybe others don't want to hear, but we believe in free expression, but we do that within certain limits. And we have clear policies, and we seek to make sure that those limits are properly safeguarded. But I don't know, I'm certainly not complaining that there should be a particular focus on Facebook, because we do play a particularly important role in those public debates. The only thing I hope want to sort of point out fairly enough is that we're never going to eliminate all hate speech. Hateful individuals saying hateful things to each other has been around since the dawn of time, and every form of communication technology, email, telephone, now social media, are used by a minority of people to utter a minority of hateful things. It is our job to go after that content, but I don't want anyone to imagine that we can rid the world of hateful speech, because that is part of the human condition. Our job is to make sure it's minimized as much as we can minimize it, but I don't want to pretend that we can eliminate it altogether.
What about the criticism that some feel that this content, particularly inflammatory content, glorifying violence, division, disinformation, in some way leads to more eyeballs, and therefore in some way leads to a bigger bottom line, greater revenue for Facebook? Is there a worry, and how do you tackle that criticism that you're not doing enough because basically it helps generate revenue for you?
Oh, let me be absolutely clear. We do not profit from hate. We have no incentive to have hate on our platform. We don't like it. Crucially, our users don't like it. Users, we know this from the surveys that we conduct with users, they don't like to see hateful, inflammatory content on their news feed. And of course, advertisers, they've made quite clear, don't like it either. It's not a question of whether one is for or against hate. Everybody is against hate. It is, what do you do about it? We do not benefit from hate. We benefit from positive human connection. And thankfully, the vast majority of content on Facebook is positive, useful, sometimes playful, often innocent. It's families sharing photos and videos of their family birthday parties. It's the dad creating a Facebook group for his daughter's football team. It's the local family business reaching out to customers by way of our platforms. That is what we want to celebrate and safeguard, while bearing down on the minority, the small minority of hateful content that we want to get rid of just as much as anybody else.
And you've been, of course, talking with civil rights leaders. You've been working with them for a long time. For example, Laura Murphy, the civil rights audit that you do each year. If it's not about the bottom line, which you so eloquently put, why take the decisions now to start changing policy when much of your work with the civil rights community has been going on for months, as you already say? Why make the change now?
Well, in part because this is ongoing work. The work with Laura Murphy and the independent civil rights audit that is being conducted into our policies and our practices is an iterative process. And they've already issued a number of reports and will be issuing a final audit in the weeks to come. But for instance, after the legitimate debate about the different decisions that different social media companies took about some of the tweets and posts from President Trump recently, Mark Zuckerberg said that quite openly that we will continue to review policies, for instance, about when and when not to justify posts and content about state action and the use of state force. What more should we be doing to safeguard the elections, to make sure that voter registration and voter information is as available and authoritative as it can be to millions of American voters? We are launching, for that reason, the country's, America's largest voter information and voter registration effort ever. And we announced on Friday that going forward, we haven't put it into practice yet, almost any post dealing with how to vote, the voting process, particularly whether the voting process will be affected by the COVID pandemic, will have a link attached to it. So a user could just click on that link and immediately be referred to authoritative, useful information about how, where, and when to vote. Those are the steps we're taking. It's an ongoing journey. We will continue to make improvements.
Of course, talking about voting, and I know you're a man who served in British politics for a long time, you know about stress and on the day job, but how are you coping and how are the employees at Facebook coping?
Well, I think everybody at Facebook accepts and embraces the fact that Facebook, because of its success, because people enjoy using our products, you enjoy using Instagram, Facebook, Messenger, WhatsApp at the scale that they do, that scale and that success comes with particular responsibilities. And we work exceptionally hard. We believe that we have an industry-leading record in how we deal with the dark side of the internet, as well as all the joy and the light and the good side of the internet. We accept that that journey is never finished, that job is never done. We constantly need to evolve. We have developed now some of the world's most sophisticated machine learning and AI systems so that we can go after this bad content at great speed and at great scale. But I think everybody accepts that is a legitimate source of wider public debate, and that people quite rightly will want to put pressure on us to go further and faster. It's equally, however, our job and my job in this interview to explain what we've achieved, how our values aligned with those people who want to rid the platform of hate speech, and the reality of how we go about doing that. Because I don't want to pretend that this is an easy, straightforward task, that there's simply a switch that we can flick and then all hate speech suddenly disappears from one instant to the next. That, unfortunately, is not a solution which is available to us.